So I'll spotlight everybody. Welcome everybody. So tonight, as we have, I guess it's become a sort of a new tradition with BALN, is to host a panel on the month of Thanksgiving. And we are also exploring this potentially to hold more this type of dialogue. So tonight is less about, not so much about not so much about like a presentation, but a sense making among people who have experience, or we're welcoming guests to the conversation, and we'll open it up for a larger conversation that includes you all. But for tonight, we will be focusing our friends here. Tonight we'll be talking about blind spots and agile transformations. What does that mean? And what are the blind spots? We'll be exploring, we'll be looking for them. And definitely you are welcome to pose questions in the chat. Later, we'll start off a little bit with some questions that I have pre-prepared. My name is Wee Nguyen. I'm one of the volunteers here, but tonight, the moderator for tonight. You know, we'll get a chance to open it up, and I'll remove the spotlight, and everybody will be on a level playing field with everybody else. Tonight we have on our panel, we'll welcome Pat Reed, who is a brilliant executive business coach, goes a long way, knows many important people in the Agile industry, and I would say she has done a lot of Agile leadership herself. Who has, I believe, you've worked in a number of different arenas, right, Pat? Everywhere from Walmart, PayPal, and now with the government of Australia, if I'm not mistaken, right? Right. And anything you would like to add there, Pat?
Probably every oil and energy company in Australia and New Zealand and Malaysia have just become clients, so that's a hot spot.
Awesome. So thanks for coming to this tonight. Looking forward to everything you have to share with us.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you.
Right. I'll move next to Amelia, who's also a really great friend. Amelia is very talented. I consider her as the queen of Agile games. She has a site called Agile Toy Box. Currently, I forget the director at Visco, right? VSICO. And she was formerly of Solutions IQ, Accenture, and spent some time doing some large transformation for JP Morgan Chase. Welcome, Amelia. Anything you'd like to add? Did I miss anything?
No, not really.
All right, very good. Thank you. Welcome. And last but not least, my good friend Andrew Webster, who is disclaimer here, Andrew and I also host another meetup together called Wisdom at Work, which we'll shamelessly plug toward the end of the session. Andrew is also another talented enterprise coach, I would say, right? Spent time at a number of different organizations, also spent time at PayPal. Where else have you worked, Andrew?
Oh, Visa, all over Australia as well. Bunch of places. As I like to say when I introduce myself, I have a background. And moving on.
Right. So how I came about tonight was like, this was a topic, I think the blind spots I think they're very true. I've been in a couple of Agile transformations now, and I think, hey, it's in the booby traps in the darkness that get us. Right, it's not what they tell you in Agile coaching school, or boot camps and things like that. And what we have done here is like I specifically chose these friends, not mainly because, well, I know them well for a number of reasons. I chose them for a number of reasons. One is, well, I know them well. Two is that each of these people I hold very close to my heart in terms of peers and friends who think outside of the box, to get a different perspective, who think differently about Agile. Generally, you won't get run-of-the-mill answers, or you'll get a very good insider's perspective, right? And then I think, so tonight will be about a bit about dialogue, and we'll bring, as I said, we said in the invite, bring your wicked questions and we'll post them, okay? All right, so let's launch into the first question. If you all are ready, so every year there's the State of Agile coaching, or a State of Agile survey. Now, last night I found there's been the emergence of the State of Agile coaching survey. I saw that there was an Agile marketing one last night. I didn't even know that existed. I think there is a business agility one too, right? But in essence, these surveys have been conducted we're at 15 or 22 at them, 22 years, like 15 years at least, right? The State of Agile survey was I think the one for 2022 hasn't been sent out yet, not the 16th one. But regardless, doesn't matter. In essence, as far as I remember when I read these things, the perennial problems are still the same. And to me, it's these top two things, right? So the top two things are generally problems with Agile culture, or problems with Agile mindset amongst leaders, or there would be a side flavor of, to me, it's relatively the same, like Agile education. And we keep talking about this for as long as we've been talking about for a long time. What are we getting wrong here? Well, what's the motto? It's the second time I've used this phrase today. That making the same mistake multiple times is his definition of insanity, right? So what are we getting wrong? Who wants to take the first shot?
Well, I'll jump in if you like.
Please.
I don't think we're getting anything wrong. I think the problem is that within Agile's domain, we've scrubbed it pretty clean. We're really good in there, but it doesn't operate in isolation. And it has absolutely no influence over much greater influences, such as socioeconomic structure inside which all of our organizations are designed and have to operate, such as the education system that's designed to have people qualified as opposed to used to learning. So I think that all things considered, Agile actually does a really, really good job, but what it does a really good job at. But we keep bumping up against the edges of it where we find that we're not actually producing the outcomes that we thought we would, because there's things outside of our control that are impairing that. What do you guys think? Pat, Amelia?
I think somewhat. I think it's that we come in and we expect that you're going to change the culture of these really big places and change people who've spent their entire careers winning and being rewarded for achieving and what they achieved. And it is a totally different world to say that it's not about you anymore. And to change the behaviors and beliefs that have been built over a career. And it's not like they're not successful.
That's right. Yeah. Why should I change? That's the question, right? It's essentially what you're getting at, Amelia. Like, it worked for me before. Why should I listen to you?
Well, and I'm seeing such a difference being in an organization populated by mostly Gen Z folk. Like, I didn't have to come in and change any mindset. It's like the opposite problem of most transformations. So I think that Andrew is exactly right. It's a change in our culture. And, I don't know if we will ever change some of the folks like, Jamie Dimon from JP Morgan Chase, right? They're not going to change, but we've been playing a long game and we just have to keep playing a little bit longer.
Well, I think I'd like to add to that is the system that we're trying to change is not broken. It's doing exactly as it's been conditioned and as it's evolved to be. And ultimately, we can't change anyone or any system at all. So if we keep bumping up against that system, we're simply wasting our energy, because the system has to change itself. So we have to influence the system to discover and emerge, or at least evolve, into a healthier future state. So I like to sort of hang the carrot out there, as opposed to try to change it, hang the carrot out there of thriving in an increasingly uncertain future, and use a bit of shock therapy if that helps, by helping people understand that it's never, ever going to be slower than it is right now. The future is like ramping up, and if we incentivize the system to thrive in that future, then it wants to change, then we all win.
So I'm gonna have to. We've had a few conversations in the past, Pat, about shock therapy. So I think for this audience, if it's possible, can you share with your definition of what shock therapy is?
Yes, shock therapy is different for every organization and every individual, but I'll give you an example in the spirit of agility. And this example will take us to the western part of Australia, Perth to be specific. And there was a bank, a prominent bank in Perth, that had embraced an agile transformation, and their leaders got it in terms of just academics. And they were pretending to be agile. They were great performers, and they were pretending to be agile. So they were saying all the right things, yet they were holding the entire corporation back. Because guess what happens in that system with the people in the organization? The culture of an organization is derived from every single person's core values and beliefs. And, so when the leaders are incongruent, they're actually talking the talk, but not even remotely walking the walk, that creates some tension that is not conducive to true transformation. So I happened to find my way to Perth, or actually they invited me to come by to share a bit of shock therapy. And in this particular bank, we were doing a transformation meeting with all the executives, the board and the executives of the bank. And so I locked them in a bank vault in an incredibly uncomfortable, the heat and it was just a miserable condition. And then I told them very almost pummeled them with the reality that their bank was going to fail, and they were going to all, there's no way they were going to succeed with any of their thriving in the future until they gave up that posturing and actually had to do something. Now, I was in cahoots with the senior executives at the organization to do this. So we had orchestrated a little event, which was a forcing function to force the mid-level executives into action. And it really did work, amazingly so. They were able to get into shape, let's say, by letting go of that delusion that they wanted to pretend to be agile leaders. And they had to be thrown into a situation via shock therapy to actually really be thrust into that role. So they had to take action. Now, there's a shorter story to that long story, and that is you can't really become agile by just thinking about it. You have to do something about it. You have to actually change your behavior to change new ways of thinking, which then reinforces, it breaks through those bottlenecks. So that's kind of why I call it shock therapy. You have to sometimes shock the system out of its state of inertia into action, which is going to really help transform. Kind of creates a series of adaptive actions that are going to result in learning, which I believe is the heart of agility.
That's really good, because it's worth acknowledging that even in the most dysfunctional and toxic organization, very few people, I would assert, are deliberately trying to be dysfunctional and toxic. They all think they're doing the right thing.
Yeah.
And so it does require something to de-educate them, or to break the frame, to use one of Wee's favorite expressions, so they can actually see that what occurs as being right to them is potentially leaving a trail of dead bodies behind them.
Yeah. And that usually it's a necessity.
Yeah. Yeah.
Could you speak, what do you mean by necessity, just to kind of tease that out a little bit there, Pat?
Yeah, well, some people won't take the journey. Some people are not ready for it. I like to actually start by helping kind of shine a mirror, hold a mirror up to people and say, are we really ready for this? And if we're not, we may choose to exit stage left so that we can make the space for the others to move on with the journey. But there are always going to be some people in a transformation that choose to go back to the old ways of working, and they don't want to go on that journey. They're not ready.
Yeah. And this is kind of where I agree with you. There's an aspect here that's what bothers me about the mindset word.
Yeah.
Because if they don't want to let go of their mindset, no amount of talking about it is really going to shift it. So let me kind of pivot you all a little bit. So like, and I know this question comes up because I think somebody mentioned the idea of like installing Agile and things like that. A lot of times, like most of us, I would say probably predominantly a majority of us that are on this call are thrust into these transformations, right? We show up, we were hired into the position, they wanted to do some sort of scaling. How do we break that frame? How do we do shock therapy from the bottom up? How might we do it if we could pull it off? Like, do you have any recommendations for the rest of us of, where would we even begin? And what would we try to do if we were to do it?
Well, I'd say, if you don't mind me jumping in, is create an experience that everyone pays attention to, where they say, hey, did you see those guys over there? You sense that energy? Look at that energy of what's happening with that team. They might not have any executive support. They might just be busting through each blockade, but they release energy and they get results, and the leaders pay attention. They're like, hey, whatever they're doing, we want more of that. It doesn't have to be called Agile or anything else, but it's like create and release the energy to get the results that everyone's going to pay attention to. And the senior executives, the higher up, my experience has been, the higher up a senior board member or executive is, the more they pay attention to empirical data and released energy. They're like, wow, something's happening over there. They can feel it and they want to know more about it. And that's the way to kind of break through the inertia, by releasing the energy in terms of its natural state. Just as Andrew was saying, nobody comes to work to sit around, and waste their time. They want to make a difference. So you give them an opportunity to do what they can do, and you showcase it, and everybody wants to be part of your team. You'll have people hanging out. They'll want to come and spend their lunch hours with your team, because it's sort of contagious.
Can I jump in with a couple of things on that?
Please.
So first, I'd like to say absolutely +1. My experience of whenever it's been successful, it's not been because we've been banging the Agile drum. It's because something good has happened and other people are like, I want some of that. And one of the best, most ingenious ways of getting that started that I've ever tried or come across is, if you have some executive sponsorship, then ask them if it's all right if you could actually hold an open space and hold it around some very business attractive theme, like how do we become the leaders in our market, something like that. And then you and your executive sponsors stand back and watch, and you see who is actually engaging. And you have a quiet word with them saying, well, we've got something new we'd like to try. Would you be interested in being on the little inside team that will have a go at that? And that's how you find the people who could actually be willing to go, yeah, we'll do this. If that works, that's brilliant. Absolutely. That's a little thread that you can then pull on. Doesn't take much, because we know this stuff works. That once it's working, there's other people going, they're making me look bad. I wonder what they're doing. I better go and do some of that. Or as you say, Pat, they're going, well, they're making me look bad, but I'm too invested in all of this. I've been doing this for donkey's years. It's worked for me. Well, why should I change it now? 2 years and I've got my pension. Or whatever it is, bless them. You can't make them wrong. That's the trouble, that when you go in and go, oh, you got to change your mindset. What they've heard is, you're telling me I'm an idiot? You're telling me I got my career wrong?
That's brilliant. So what I'm hearing from the two of you is like, how do we start the spark? How do we turn heads? That kind of thing, right? To get attention, that thing. Now, I will say, you know, I think I kind of want to kind of move on to the next subject and give Amelia the first shot at it. It's sort of like, so that, notice here, actually, here's the question. We've been 20 minutes into this conversation. Not once have none of you ever mentioned the word scaling or any framework. Think about that, folks. So what's the reaction there, Amelia? It's like, what's the place for this stuff? You know,
the framework doesn't matter.
Why doesn't it matter?
I mean, pick your favorite. It's not what's going to make the change. You know, whether it is the most loved framework or the most hated framework, all that is the stuff that we might do and some training wheels and some meetings that we might have. It's actually about getting the humans to work together. And every single, I mean, I don't think any of us would have jobs if humans could just talk to each other and work together well.
I like your just in there.
Yeah.
Very big just.
Well, it's hard.
Amelia, you've nailed the essence of Agile, which is people over process. Frameworks are process.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's just so good. The very first thing on my list of things I wanted to touch was confusing a framework for a methodology. And of course, people want certainty, and methodologies promise certainty, but that's not what we're dealing with. We don't do certainty anymore.
And you'll be fine.
There is no certainty.
No.
It is like a little, some people regard it as a Trojan horse. You get your foot in the door, but what do you do with the Trojan horse after you're in, right? That's the question. Right.
The story that Andrew told just a minute ago was co-creation, the spirit of co-creation. Give everybody the opportunity to make a difference and get really excited and co-create the change, right? Give them an open space, give them an opportunity to ignite, you know, and release their sparks and really experience making a difference, and they'll never go back.
I've got a bee in my bonnet about, when I'm training people, holding off on the values and principles to the last possible moment. But I put a lot of emphasis into the introductory sentence. We are uncovering better ways of developing software, working, living, by doing it and helping others do it. The very first word is we. We are. Well, you do it in the present. Uncovering. Oh, it's right there if you just pay attention. Better, not best. Ways. What are the ways? I don't know. We'll have to uncover them. Of whatever it is that we're up to, by doing it hands-on and helping others do it. Oh yeah, we're back to we again. Oh, it's all there.
Yeah. Okay,
that
so I can't believe how much time is moving past. It's like it's going by really fast. So I'm gonna circle back to your answer in the beginning and give some of the ladies the chance at it. You mentioned, or actually all three of you really. So we were talking about blind spots. So you came in, the initial salvo was fired was, we got Agile down in the DevOps and the software development. let's assume we got that nailed. Where else are we blind? Where are the pitfalls? What's going to sink us outside of what we think is in the realm of the typical mainstream thinking of frameworks and software delivery and DevOps and those things? What's going to sink us?
Humans.
Getting stuck with our success. If Agile isn't evolving, we're going to lose. If we're going to stay stuck in Scrum, and every single day I just made up Scrum, stay stuck in anything, say for anything. And every single day we repeat the same ceremonies, and we don't evolve, and we don't learn, and we don't get better, then that's as bad as a blind spot. That's going to we're going to fall off a cliff someday.
Right. So what do we have to explore? We're going to have to let's go past the stuckness now, right? Because I would say, hey, that's what those State of Agile surveys. We're stuck.
We are stuck.
So where do we need to move in, y'all? Like, what other areas that we need to move into that we are not, the industry is currently not thinking about?
One of the secret sauces is recognizing we're stuck. Self-awareness is the key. And you've probably seen S-curves, and Elon Musk is famous with his S-curve jumping. So as soon as that S-curve starts to plateau, we've got Agile now, we're really getting better, we're getting better and better, we're learning at a phenomenal scale. We've got to start a new S-curve. We've got to start a new S-curve way before we need it, so that we're always doing S-curve jumping, which is, reinventing ourselves for that next curve, because it's the energy that we release with that S-curve jumping that helps ensure that we're becoming fit for the future and invincible.
Right. So Andrew and Amelia, so what S-curves are we, what other S-curves could we jump? What are the S-curves?
Well, I think the biggest one for us is that we are still not looking at organizations as holistic ecosystems. Agile still lives in the realm of software.
But wait, we keep talking about complex adaptive systems and systems thinking and on and on and on and on. What are we not getting?
But we are still not speaking the language of business and the language of executives.
And so we just need to learn that language, right? Because the world I work in are large energy companies that have to transform the world. The time is now. The opportunity is in this moment, but we have to be very careful. And one of the things we have to be careful about is not inundating these business executives with language that they think, you're just the geeks over there. You're just the software engineers. They're not interested. So we have to be very careful to learn their language. And what their language is about is show me the value. Cost of value, time to value, exponential value through, that real throughput of value.
Yeah. I can't tell how difficult it is with many of the organizations I've been a part of when you ask them, what is valuable about this? Where is the value? I don't know.
Yeah, you have to help them discover it.
You've got to pull those pieces away and help figure that out and figure out what does it mean and what is the outcome there. It's not about I did 20 story points, I did 50 story points.
Yes, in fact, story points are not even remotely associated with value.
Yeah, so
that's effort. Story points are effort, not value.
I think we're way past that territory right now, right? Andrew, it seems like you got another beat.
I am bursting. So yeah, value. We need to talk their language.
Yeah.
And that's the problem. Today is 8 billion people day.
Yeah.
According to the United Nations, we've hit 8 billion people. In 1950, there were a third of that many people. the rate of growth of humanity was less than 0.01% until about the 1700s. It peaked at 2.1% in 1968. We're seeing that the result of value is that we have a global culture that is still stuck in the notion of endless growth. And as a result, we are over double the carrying capacity of the planet, the capacity of this planet to actually sustain us. And it's a big split as to whether we can expand that carrying capacity or whether our efforts to do so have shrunk it. And if we just serve our clients' desires to do more, better, faster, that is the terrifying blind spot that is an absolute black hole that we could all fall into. Now, how you talk to them about that, well, that's literally all that I think about all day, every day, is how do you tell a story that honors the effort that they have put into being the people they are, that honors their desire to live up to everything, that acknowledges that some of the people at the very top of our society, frankly, are there because they are sociopaths who believe that it means something about them to be there. We've already referenced Elon Musk, and I'm perfectly happy to assert that Elon Musk is a dangerous sociopath. And there are many others out there. But I think that it actually is one of the big blind spots of Agile, is that we start going, how can I stop being miserable at work? And that goes to going, oh, I work with people. Well, how can I stop my team being miserable at work? Oh, well, it's because managers are under pressure. How can I use managers' problems? Well, it's because their executives are. Well, why is that? Because of the board. Oh, why is that? Well, it's because of the stock market. Why is that? Oh, Lord, I've got to transform the entire socioeconomic structure of the planet. Yikes. I don't know how to do that.
But the system knows how to do it, Andrew.
But the system, right.
The system itself knows how to do it.
Yes.
And just in the spirit of the first question we shared with me about shock therapy, we've got to shock the system into valuing doing less, not doing more with less.
That's the S curve, isn't it? It's
That
not
is,
an S curve to growth.
That's the
Yes.
essence of the answer.
Yes.
We've
Yes.
got to completely flip it and reframe it. And everyone I've worked with gets this when you can present it in a language that's real for them. They know they've been inundated with the frustration of trying to do more with less for 20 years since Agile emerged. They've now got to actually do less to create more value. And they've got to let everything.
What do you mean? You guys are telling me I can't be everything to everyone?
But that's
sorry
the
about that.
beautiful thing that I see emerging with the younger folks that I'm working with now.
Yeah, yeah.
That is at the essence of it.
They get it.
It's about meaning. It's about doing the right things, not all the things.
Right.
Yes. Yes.
And creating that capacity for sustainability and learning.
Yes.
Creating that capacity to thrive in this amazing planet and not deplete it because we want more. And you see how it traces all back to that? Not more with less, but actually let go of everything that's not delivering measurable value and let it go.
Yes.
So that we create more sustainable value.
I'm a huge fan of Kate Raworth's donut economics. And that shift from endless growth and GDP to putting the same smarts, the same intelligence, same wonderful skills that a species with a neocortex is capable of exhibiting into regeneration and sustaining, into making sure that we are neither too little nor too much. I think that's just wonderful. And I mean, certainly when I train folks now, that's part of the training. That's part of what has people go, oh, we're operating in a bigger context. And I'm also a huge fan of complexity theory, Cynefin,
Yeah, David
giving
Snowden's work. Yeah.
yeah, so that people actually have the capacity to go, oh, I have some situational awareness. Agile doesn't work everywhere, nor does Six Sigma, nor does this, nor does that, but I can now know where to apply things.
Yeah. It's a
lot more than
it's a
Scrum.
great tool of making sense of the world.
Yes, sense making, exactly.
Yeah, sense
Yes.
making.
Okay, this is
Yes.
great. Now we're upsetting the apple cart of the world capitalist system, and I think that's for a future.
Man the barricades, lads.
Bring it on.
All right, so I kind of want to do a pivot here. So we're talking about some pretty provocative things, right? We're talking about really changing up the OS and how we run business. It makes me start to think about, how are we operating a business? What does it mean to operate a business? What is operations? That's one. But more so, I think where you guys are leading me is like going back to the mindset question. I think like Christina brought up the thing of like meeting them where they're at, and the popular idea of psychological safety.
Mm.
And what is psychological safety? I mean, I'm going to put a very provocative statement out here. I'm like, I think the way we define psychological safety right now, we're a little bit BSing ourselves. Are we playing too small? What does it really mean? And when you're talking about completely changing to a different economic system, you're talking about like, we're not just moving somebody's cheese, we're talking about moving their cheese cave, right? So
At the heart of it, if I could just jump in and get kind of right to the heart of it, is learning is the key. Learning and adapting and evolving is the key to agility. Agility can't exist in a vacuum without evolving and learning.
Mm-hmm.
We don't learn if we're not feeling psychologically safe.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we're hardwired. Our brainstem is going to force us into fight or flight or shutdown if we're not feeling psychologically safe. Even if I personally feel psychologically safe, but I see symptoms in the news or in the organization where somebody else has experienced a lack of psychological safety, I immediately zone in on that, right? So if without that psychological safety, we can't cultivate an environment for optimal learning.
Right.
Then we can't learn to create more value because we can't adapt. And agility is about adapting and learning.
So let me, if I may, Pat, with all respect, right? I deeply respect you. And let me challenge you a little bit here, right? Because on one hand, we said, hey, we got to go do some shock therapy. We got to go challenge them. We got to like generate some momentum, generate a spark, challenge their thinking. But at the same time, they need to feel psychologically safe so they learn. So how do we, is there a little bit of a...
creates the space so that they can focus on learning, right? Shock therapy is not, we're not damaging brain cells.
Right.
We're actually shining a light on their cognitive biases. We're shining a light on the blind spot. You know, if you go back to my first story about Perth, I didn't go in there to harm anybody.
Right.
I went in there to wake them up. Right? Not to create fear. I went in there to create the space for them to let go of their performances. This particular organization had fallen into a performance trap. Look at me, I am performing like the perfect executive. I'm pretending to be agile, and I get really psyched about that pretending.
Right.
So I had to shine a light on pretending is not a good thing.
Right.
You need to be real and authentic.
I'm a snide and jokingly way, it's like I'm a professional deck chair rearranger on the Titanic, right?
Yes.
Kind of like,
and so that there wasn't incongruence there. It was actually congruence.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I saw an old mentor of mine who was very confrontational lead a group of executives to a point where he could say to them, yeah, you're all a bunch of liars, aren't you?
Mhm.
And they all went, you know what? Yeah, now you come to mention it. Yeah, yeah. He'd
Yeah.
done the work to get them there, which was a wonderful thing, because the work to get them there so they don't experience social threat.
Mhm.
Social threat is the source of loss of psychological safety. I mean, I think the reason I love that today is the 8 billion human day is it, for me, that's a wonderful avatar
Mhm.
for what's happened to humans. You mentioned cognitive bias. Well, we throw that term around like it's something wrong.
Yeah.
Cognitive biases are evolutionary adaptations for
It's
a
a
world.
survival mechanism.
Yeah, yeah.
Unless we get stuck in it when we can't actually get unstuck.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We've accidentally,
Mhm.
through our own smarts, created a world that operates way outside the sort of granularity that we're good at. Much too quick and much too slow, much too big, much too small. We're no good at that. And so the joy is that we come with a neocortex
Mhm.
that's quite capable of going, oh, look, I don't want to have to keep learning because that takes a lot of calories. It's tiring,
Yes,
but I
and
can learn.
right.
And you're right. If you can actually put them into a point where they go, oh, Pat, why did you have to show us that? You're absolutely right. All right. All right. All right. I get it. I get it. And you're right.
And
You're
the
right. It's usually a
interesting
shock.
thing, Andrew, it was in service to them.
Yes.
It was not, you know,
No.
it was in their greater interest.
Yes.
And they know it.
Yes. And that's why I love Agile. That Agile at its heart is about going, listen, my lovelies, you got taught to think that you're qualified, which means you can stop learning.
Yes.
Sorry.
And beware of the expert.
Beware,
Exactly.
expert, you know,
So much.
and you experts, I get that
Yeah.
you're so invested in being experts. Of course you are. Let's use what got you to that expertise
Mhm.
for what's now useful, not what got you there.
Mhm.
That's why I love complexity, that it points out that actually when a world is complex and emergent,
Mhm.
you can't rely on expertise because expertise is based on patterns that work then, and the world's just
Exactly. And
emerged
it'll
and
kill
something
you.
different. Yeah, it'll kill you.
What's next? Is
What's
it's all
next?
Yeah.
Yes.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Amelia, anything from you?
I mean, I totally agree. It's the what's next,
It's what's next.
and we don't know what's next.
Mhm.
Yeah. And that's
It's
fine.
And seeing what's next and sense and respond and
I think
That's where
that's
sense
face.
making comes in, Amelia.
yeah.
Making
So-
sense of what's next.
exactly.
So
Right.
so out
In
of
fact-
my
Oops, sorry, you guys.
go
In
ahead.
fact,
Continue.
preserving the capacity, each of us has the responsibility of reserving the capacity to spend some time in the what's next.
Yes.
So,
Which is where
so
the
let-
slowing down comes in. So you
Exactly.
actually have
Right.
the time to pay attention. Yes.
I want to
yes.
talk about that right now. So I
Mhm.
want to pose two questions, and I want
Go for it,
I want to
Lee.
open it up for everybody, right? So this thing about slowing down. So a lot of times, like I see when I work alongside other coaches or other senior coaches that I've seen, there's obviously a lot of times there's a. What advice do you have for the rest of us around slowing down and holding the unknown for the emergent to arise? There's almost as if it's in our nature to go and seek an answer. A lot of times this comes out as like sayings like coach the problem, not the person.
Mhm.
I mean, coach the person, not the problem, right?
Mhm.
But see, that's a nice platitude in a way, right? Yes,
Yeah.
it does. That's important, but it's a lot harder than people think it is.
Yeah.
It's really hard.
What is it that they're hanging on to in that blind spot area so that they can figure out would you have any advice for them so that they don't go and reach for that? Because a lot of times people just reach for the first answer they can get a hold of, or they think they begin to problem solve right away.
Right, because
Right?
they're actually stuck. Right, but I
Yes.
would what I do is I hold a mirror up to their capacity. Show me your capacity. I got another story to tell about working with shock therapy with the officers of a Fortune 1 company,
Mhm.
one of the biggest in the world. They fell into that trap, believing that doing more is better, and I'm better than you are. If they were in very much zero-sum gaming and jockeying for I'm working harder than you are, which
Right.
was setting the tone for the entire organization to stumble. So I
Mm.
came in and I said, okay, how do you measure the value you're creating each day? How much value did you create yesterday? I asked the officers, each one,
Mhm.
to really sit down and reflect on how much value they've created the day before. Instant shock therapy. Everybody in the room just went dead silence, which was a good sign because they were paying attention. They didn't default into, well, I created 500,000% value and you only created 200, whatever. They were actually, that was shocking them into the awareness that this particular group of officers work 6.5 days each week. And they work very long days. And they had gotten into zero-sum gaming. I win if you lose. And when I shined that light on show me what you did to create value, and they acknowledged, does anybody want to guess what their answer was when they came back to me? These are the top supply chain officers in the entire world. They were honest and said less than 10%. I
Wow.
created less than 10% value that I could quantify yesterday to my teams and to my customers. And so what I did was I celebrated that by shining a light on that and saying, look at what you just freed up. 90% capacity to make a difference.
Right.
Then we focused on that capacity that
Mm.
they could actually value greater than being busy. They acknowledged for themselves. I didn't have to tell them anything.
Mm.
They acknowledged for themselves that they had fallen into the trap of being busy. And if I'm busier than you are, if I have more meetings than you have, or if I spend more time with the CEO or the board, then I'm better. They had fallen into that trap. And all I did was shine a little mirror on them and freed up 90% of their capacity.
Mm.
And then we shifted the conversation to what are they going to do about it?
Right.
And you know what they did? Any ideas? Or they said they recognized the dilemma they'd been in. And they actually eliminated all wasteful meetings, all status reports, all the trappings of being busy. And they freed the entire corporation up to hit new rarefied heights of profitability in a good way for the greater good of the consumers, by actually having that bit of shock therapy and awareness, self-awareness of they could use that capacity for the greater good. And not just jockeying around to pretend I'm busier than you are, so I must be more important.
I think one part that's missing here is really acknowledging that it's hard.
Oh, it's all hard.
It's easy to get, just stop doing as much, but it's hard. It's got to be intentional. It's like hurts, especially if you talk about folks who've, been achieving through the being busy.
Yeah.
Yeah, but the secret sauce between that, and you're spot on, Amelia. The secret sauce is making value visible,
Yes.
quantifying it, and stop doing anything that doesn't hit a hurdle rate. If this costs 5 times more than the value it's generating, don't do it.
Yeah.
And the same way of shining a light on capacity, shine a light on value, make value visible, make capacity visible, standardize it so that it's normalized, if you will. Then you got a shot at it. If you don't, it's hopeless.
So let me reiterate, because my question was like, what is like me, I'm an agile coach. What am I to do with that? So you're telling me, Pat, I should try to figure out what my team's capacity metrics is, what the organization capacity is. If I can try to get it out of the leaders of like what their capacity is, what value is.
No, nobody, like Amelia's point is really important. Nobody knows their capacity.
Right.
Mhm.
You know, we just push ourselves
you, Pat.
harder and harder. But can I tell
Yeah.
you guys a quick story about a local tech company? The network engineers at this local tech company that I was helping to transform had spent 17 years. These are brilliant network engineers. They'd spent 17 years working 7 days a week, and they were so overwhelmed with capacity because they never learned to say no, because it was hard.
Yeah.
Their reputation was their belief system. It does go all the way back to their belief system. Their belief system was, we can't say no. We just have a backlog of 200,000 items, and we could work every vacation and every weekend and never get out from under our backlog. So what we did was we built a value model and a prioritization model. And being network engineers, they were really efficient at designing an algorithm to filter out the highest value work from the lowest once we quantified it with real data. And once we really focused on that, it didn't take that long. It was maybe an hour and a half to do a prioritization model and score it and then tune it. And then they took the entire backlog and ran it through that. And then we pulled in the manager, the senior director, VP, to actually validate that we could throw away all the lower value work. So these guys had the capacity. So they know capacity when they feel it, Amelia, because they can go home for one Saturday and be with their family, right? But to ask, measuring what's your capacity? They don't know how to measure it. We don't have a measuring stick that's consistent and normalized and standardized.
So what I'm saying is, you as a coach, if you're going to move people in this, the first step is to understand what you're doing, what your personal capacity to do things, and leave time for thinking, and leave time for learning, and leave time for development.
Yeah.
Like, the first step is you've got to do that for yourself before you can help organizations, before you can help companies.
And role model it.
Yeah.
You have to get off the treadmill.
Yeah.
And
Put on and be the showcase
your
to
oxygen
do
mask
that.
first, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so my last question, and I think we lost Andrew, so as soon as he pops back in, I'll have spotlight him again. My last question is, a lot of times, so we often talking about what's dysfunctional. Let's go the other way. What does good look like? And like, if you could just sum that up in one short statement, if at all possible. I know that's a big challenge, but what should people be aiming for, right? When they're when do they know like things are moving in the right direction?
I like to use a team health meter or a team health check. You know, we talk a lot about artifacts, but is the team healthy? Is the team happy? Look at the team energy, look at the team healthiness. I use this emotional energy quadrant sheet. Anybody can Google that and find
and
this bright yellow sheet.
This isn't the same as like some sort of agile maturity rubric or anything,
oh, no,
right?
No.
No.
Right? Yeah, I mean, sorry, I'm going to reboot the answer to the question. Are my people happy? Can they imagine ever leaving to work somewhere else? No, they never can, because they are energized to come to work. So this isn't some maturity model, quantifiable, gamifiable thing. This is about, is my team really happy?
Are they thriving? Are they flourishing?
Are they thriving? Do they love to be here? If you can see in their experiences, they would never even think of working anywhere else because they love it here. Then we know this is an environment where people thrive. We're adapting, right? Because otherwise they're not going to thrive.
Right. Amelia, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, for me, immediately what came up is a question that I often ask when I'm working with new teams, which is, tell me about the greatest team you've ever been a part of. When that is the team that you are on, then you're there.
Sorry about that. Blaming technology.
Let me spotlight you here. So repeat that again. Amelia?
So for me, it's asking the question, what's the greatest team you've ever been a part of?
Yeah. What's it?
And
We're
then
asking.
where's sort of the humans, the people, right?
It's always
And
about
then-
people.
And then where is this team that compares to that? Various whatever.
Is
Whatever
this like a
makes the
peak
team the
experience?
greatest, Where
Yeah.
does this fall in those same things? Because that's
Right.
what's important to the humans who are there.
Right.
And it's different for every group of humans.
Yeah.
Mhm,
Is this peak experience? How close are you to peak experience, kind of thing?
mhm.
Right? Awesome. All right. So Andrew, I was asked that my final question to everybody was, what's a sign of good? How do you know you're beginning to do the right thing? And what is your answer in a short statement?
Executives become responsible for the negative externalities of their organization.
You want to say that? What do you mean by some people may not understand what
Yeah.
externalities is.
Not a problem. Externalities, it's a term that economists use to describe any impacts that an organization makes that are not reflected on its bottom line. So typically pollution would be a negative externality. And of course, you know, if you know enough about complexity in systems theory, you'll know that if you have an event that causes an outcome, but the outcome is far enough off in the future to get outside the measurements designed to trap it, or there are other events in the interim, so you can't tell what caused which outcome, that's too complicated for the mind-numbingly simple math of economics. So they dismiss it as negative externalities. And it's wonderful to see organizations who that clue in enough through Agile to going, oh, well, if we're going to take care of our people, then we're going to take care of our customers, and we're going to drive out waste and not try and replace it with massive productivity, but actually replace it with something else. Oh, I wonder if we could replace it with being responsible for everything that we've caused in the world. That's a really good indicator that we've done it.
Right. That we can.
Have I ever seen it with any of my clients? No.
No.
But it's not going to have me give up. All right.
Sure. Sure. All right. Well, thank you all. So I'm going to remove the spotlight. There were a number of questions that have cropped up in chat, but I want to kind of select those that want to kind of speak up first. Like, is there anybody out there who might have a question you want to? Oops, I turned off your video, Amelia. Sorry. Let me remove my spotlight too, and welcome back to what's going on. Oh yeah, that's right.
Hey,
Back to gallery view. Hi everybody. So anybody have any questions they want to ask? Let's maybe get some hands up. If you can use the hands, then we have an ordering. Use the raise hand feature in the reactions button at the bottom of Zoom, and then we'll get you in the order. Otherwise, I'll go comb through the chat and pick up questions. Any hands? Anybody have a question or a comment that you would like our panelists to chime in on? Edward.
If we, and this may well be a cynical approach, but if we need to present the companies that we work with some kind of noble lie, to be able to provide them with a means to be able to move forward and approach things from, recognizing recognizing everything that we've discussed here tonight, what would the shape of that take? And that's only one approach, because the other approach is, how do we have more people embrace, knowing their capacity, knowing their limitations, knowing a truth. But that, if we are waiting for everyone to take the time to learn about themselves, and we're waiting for people to come to some even mild form of, for lack of a better word, enlightenment, I don't know if we have the time for that as a species.
Anybody want to respond to that? What if we're not acting fast enough?
I'd like to actually make that a very personal question for everyone. I mean, if somebody asked me that, I'd say, look, I'd like to think that all of our children and grandchildren are going to live in a world that they'd actually want to live in, and that they are grateful to us for having made it so. I know that there are plenty of indigenous peoples who have, for example, 7th generation thinking, that their responsibility is not to this generation, but 7 generations hence. I'm willing to go out 2 or 3 generations, right? But I'd love to ask, I don't know whether anybody here listening is an executive, is C-level. What would they want to be able to say, oh, if it could be like that, I'm in.
Yeah, anybody else want to chime in on that? Amelia? Or...
I don't know. It might be the easy way out, but my take was somewhere around probably 18% of the world is an early adopter that embraces this. So join organizations that are there and help them get better.
Move your feet. Vote with your feet. Was that what I'm hearing?
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, very good. Thanks for your question, Ed. Anybody else with a question? Pavel.
Yes. So agilists are change agents. How can we foster conscious change in organizations that doesn't even recognize what change is it is for them, right? How do we start?
Where do we begin?
Where do we begin?
Pat, have you got one for this?
Pat?
Yeah, Andrew, I was thinking of the comment you had earlier today about creating an open space.
Hmm.
You know, an open space is a very non-threatening event that's a social event that invites every single person to bring a question or a topic or to bring something to the table. You don't have to be invited. You don't have to be an invited speaker, but if you host an event or just a lunchtime event, it doesn't even have to be a big event, but host an event where you invite people to come and bring their thoughts and ideas, say whatever's on their mind. Everyone gets to pick up a sheets of paper and then pitch their idea. And then people self-organize around those ideas. So it's creating an environment that enables change to flourish because it becomes organic. Nobody owns it. There's no speaker, there's no agenda, there's no, it's just an event, an experience that's conducive to cultivating and nurturing change is one way. And it's fun.
Yeah. I've sometimes baited the hook by saying, look, I have no idea, actually, no idea if change is going to be good for your organization or not. I have no idea. But here's the thing. If it is good for your organization, and you drag your feet on this, and your competition have already picked up on it, how's that going to look? So why don't we do something that would allow us to at least find out whether change might be good for you? And I'd suggest an open space, so that way the ideas are coming from within the organization, the people actually know your business. But I think just that little tiny little bit of, if you don't do this, Buster, you're out of business. Oh gosh, what was his name? One of my favorite books on business agility can be summarized as, if you're not agile, you're going to be out of business. Well, I don't like saying that to people because that activates a loss of psychological safety, right? It's bloody rude. But just finding a way of going, look, I don't know, but it would be wildly irresponsible of us to not find out.
And maybe at the same time, Andrew, changing our language in terms of imagining, or, you know, using language like, what if we could? Or what are
Yes,
some ideas of how we might? Or
yes,
how might change actually be good? Or telling stories. Storytelling is an underutilized change activist as well. You
yes.
know, because how might we? I like to use language like that. And what are we going to do about it? People kind of don't want to jump in there. But how might we? Who's got an
How might we?
idea? Yeah.
And I know it sounds stupid, but the other thing I'd say is make them laugh.
Mm-hmm.
Make them laugh. I mean, once somebody is actually laughing, it alters their brain chemistry and they are much more receptive. You know, now don't be cheesy and fake about that, but if you can actually find a way of creating rapport with somebody and making them laugh and having them get that you're not there to make them wrong, but you are there to actually make their lives better. Well, I mean, I'd like that. I'd like it if somebody turned up saying, I can make your life better. I'd say, yes, please.
And that's the beauty of a lot of games.
Yes. Games and stories. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. They are not trivial. No.
For me, it's creating an event, open space, something else, and making it just a little bit hard to get there, to participate. Because those are the people that want to be there. And those are the people that will then carry it out and do change on and on and on.
So there was a couple related comments by a couple folks on the chat that said, you know, one, bring a flashlight, or what was the other one? Olaf, you said something about what was your comment? You had a really great comment. I'm lost in the chat now. You know, what do you think about that? Where could they begin to reveal things? I think we talked about capacity earlier, some of the responses that Pat brought up, but what else? How else could we shine a flashlight? Volker, I saw a flash of your hand.
I mean, it takes me a little bit back to where we started, and Pat, you started talking about sort of that idea of a readiness assessment. And that caught my attention early on. It's like, wow, how do we evaluate relatively quickly whether we're on a fool's errand and, you know, may have to fire our client or look for a new job? And where are the signals that tell us, oh, this has promise?
I'll go in. Who opts in? So there's sort of two types of folks sort of join the change agents. The people who are told, go over there and do this. And the people that say, oh, that looks interesting, cool, new, different, and I want to be a part of that. If there are enough of the I want to be a part of that humans, you're probably in a pretty good spot.
And
But you have to find it.
Sorry, Amelia, sometimes we can make it easier by giving them a channel to opt in, like to have a volunteer board, or to make something really easy for somebody who's right on the cusp of wanting to opt in, but they might be a little insecure, of saying, stop by that table and pick up an opportunity to join a community practice, or join a, you know, agile learning circle, you know, or host of this. Sometimes to give them that little hook to say, oh, it's easy, make it easy for them to opt in.
I tend to go just the other way and make
Okay.
it a little bit hard, right?
Oh,
like,
it's still hard. I'm
like, tell
not
me-
saying for somebody
tell
who
me
hasn't
why
joined
I'm a
yet,
part of
it's
this
still
change.
hard, but at least you're giving them a channel.
You have to give them a channel, but then make it just a little bit hard so that they know that they really want to do this.
Yeah, but they'll have to
For
commit
real for them.
time at lunch or time. So to do it, they still have to make a commitment. But to make it easy for them to go to the volunteer table is all I'm saying. If you don't have a volunteer table.
Right. Yeah, you have to put the opportunity out there. Broadly.
Exactly.
but then
Yes.
you have to do something.
Yeah,
One of
There
the
has to be an
experiments,
invitation. Yeah, go ahead.
one of the experiments I was part of back when I was at PayPal was creating a leadership course, and that was tough because the organizational education people didn't want us to be running training, whatever. But we created a little cadre of people who asked us if they could be part of it, but then we made them jump through hoops to be invited to join it. It made it special. Ooh. And that definitely helped. I thought I just had completely to the side of that, just as a key indicator that I'm probably working somewhere where it might work. And given that at a certain level of being an agile coach, you're probably not going to be working with the kind of people that you actually really want to be working with. By their very definition, they're more likely to need you if they're the kind of people where you go, oh God, how did you get here? One of the key indicators for me is, will they actually pay me properly? And I'm not being mercenary. I actually really don't care too much about the money. But in their world, it's very likely that means something to them. If they're paying me properly, they're putting their idea of skin in the game. That matters. I've made the mistake before now of taking roles where I was like, all right, I'll settle for that. And it was a mistake because it meant that they didn't value what I was there to do. They were agile washing. They just wanted to be able to tick a box and go, well, we've had an agile coach try. And of course, that's exactly the kind that's the kind of engagement where they think that it's a tech problem, but that isn't actually where the real bottleneck is in the organization. And you go and make things better in tech, and it doesn't make anything better anywhere else. And then they go, agile doesn't work.
There's another one.
Funny how that works out.
There's a very related one, which is, will they give you their time?
Yes. Yes.
What are you willing to sacrifice?
Yes.
Well, are you in this? Yeah, because you have skin in the game. We're literally putting your money where your mouth is kind of what I'm hearing, Andrew.
Well,
They see it as an investment as opposed to an expense.
So I'd like to interrupt here because there was an early question that Eric posted that it's close to my heart, and I just got to ask it. What do we do about the psychosis of the organization?
shine a light on it.
Well, we talked
Wait,
about
I want to complete the thought though, which is, I encounter this over and over and over and over again. We pretend our plans are brilliant. Everybody knows they're not. And then we carry on as though it's going to work out that way. And we watch what happens. And we do it over and over and over again. And it's this weird collective psychosis that occurs in, like, I don't know, almost every single organization I encounter. What is up with that?
I do think shining a light on it is important. And Eric, if you remember, one of the very first things you and I worked on together was dilemma management and paradoxes. By using this paradoxical tool or the dilemma tool, you're trying to get to win-win by using both and thinking versus either or thinking, because the centrifugal force of that either or thinking is what is ultimately pulling at poles. The two poles are pulling against each other, where you want to actually flip that to be both and thinking or win-win versus lose-lose. If that makes sense. It might sound like an academic response, but it's very real. Those poles have to be charged differently.
Yeah, I always figure that one of the things that came up earlier this evening was most organizations don't actually know what their capacity is.
Yeah, they
So
don't.
they pretend to just say, well, we're going to plan this, and the teams will just make it up in overtime because we don't know what our capacity is anyway. So, let's just make up numbers we like. And
And that's at the root cause of it. Because I remember
Absolutely.
going way back 10 or more years when you and I were talking about the Adobe challenge of the release dates. You know, do we release on target and have a faulty product, or do we have, you know, back in those days, that was the poles pulling against each other.
Yeah, which is, it reminds me of many years ago when I was in QA at Apple. And
Mhm.
somebody asked me one time, oh, we need to make this late change. What do you think that's going to do to the schedule? And
Yeah,
I just looked at them and said, schedule? You're asking the wrong person. I'm in QA. I'll ask me a quality question. We need more testing for that change. What about schedule? I don't care. That's schedule. It's not my concern. You're asking the wrong question.
yeah.
I gotta run the regression test all over again.
Eric, what I'd say is, it's not going to help an awful lot. This is what you get when you have an industrial society that uses an industrial education for post-industrial work.
Hmm.
They all think that they're supposed to know what they're doing and they can predict it. And that's why our work is so important. And by the way, when it comes to dealing with organizational psychosis, sometimes doctors have to acknowledge they can't help their patients. If you've tried everything that we've covered here today and it's not going to make any difference, what on earth are you doing wasting your time with them? Why would you tolerate that? Quit and go and use it somewhere that it would make a difference.
Mhm.
And hands up anybody here who's ever quit a job because they're like, I can't make a difference.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a great feeling. It's a great feeling.
I was going to add to that because I had a similar post about that, Eric, about the shared psychosis and the fact that there's a lot of mental health issues in all of these big organizations that people are dying to join. And, you know, for me, I really don't see, you can be an outlier in that organization, but you're not going to make friends. Unless you have somebody at the exec level who thinks, wow, you're a super smart outlier who I want to listen to, you're not going to have any influence or power in making any change in that org. And yeah, I say run.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. And it also reminds me of my very, very first job after I got out of college. I worked at a company that had a corporate library. Remember those? And I remember I used to, my cubicle was right next to it and I had just started working. I didn't have anything to do. So I went into the library and I found this book on the personality profile of corporations. And basically, if you did a personality profile on most organizations, they meet the criteria for being a psychopath. And this is like one of the first things I learned in my professional career. And I just thinking, wow, that just set a tone.
So I see a hand
Diana
up.
has her hand up.
I will throw in a comment. The question that runs through my head when that comes up is this the hill you want to die on? Just think about it that way. All right, last question of the evening. Brianna, you had a hand up.
Okay, so my question has actually a little bit to do with what Andrew just spoke about and Ms. Christina spoke about as well, is how do we influence change when so much of our energy is caught up in day-to-day survival? When you go through 5 jobs in 6 years and you have no say whatsoever what your career is going to look like because it's being held hostage by someone else's decisions, and as an example, last career I had a good agile transformation went through, but then you get a very toxic individual who's brought in to make a degree of change and just undoes all the good work you did for an agile transformation. The real question was, how do you do that? Was an example, but the question is, how do we not get caught up in the day-to-day of dealing with, someone who is toxic and just off their right mind, and you're expected to handle it.
Find your community.
Tell me, what do you mean by that, Amelia?
I mean,
why community?
The work that we do is hard and it's exhausting and lots of people don't understand it. So it's about finding a group or groups of humans that do and can support you when you're sitting in a toxic situation, and you may not be privileged enough to be able to quit your job and leave because there's all of the other stuff of life.
Yes.
But having that group of humans to like kind of come home to and go back to, who understand it and can help and support and hold you, is super, super important.
I don't disagree, but here's where I do have conflict. I have a community, very strong, Agile practitioner community, but I'm spending as much time hunting for jobs as I am trying to work. And that consumes any willpower to do good, because you just don't, you can't predict for the future, so you don't, but you have to be resilient and anti-fragile enough. And a community is great for support, but it doesn't pay the bills. And so when you have to go make a move, like you still have to find a way to survive that toxicity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. For
Brianna.
me, those communities have been a lot of what's fed me finding the next job. It's been what has sustained me through some truly, truly toxic humans.
Yeah. Brianna, I really, really feel for you, and I want to acknowledge you for whatever it is that you're doing to handle your situation. Well done.
I've come out on top, okay? Like
good.
This is not all autobiographical. Like I'm speaking of.
Oh no, I get it. As a very wise therapist once said to me, Andrew, life is inconvenient. Sometimes you will find yourself in that awful bind where you're like, I have to pay the bills, and I've got these commitments, and I've got to put up with this person. And not all of us have gone through the personal development training that allows us to manage our emotional well-being well enough to deal with someone who's learnt the tricks of basically bullying, to hold them to account, to bring it to their attention without making them wrong. That's an incredibly hard thing to do. Sometimes all you can do is acknowledge that. That's it. But as Amelia says, sometimes what you can do is find a community that will give you support. And there's always my favorite answer, which is go fuck it, quit. You'll find a job. You'll be fine.
I'll step out of the moderator role for a moment. One of the things you like, getting your own support network is good. I would say also look into getting your own personal coach.
Yes.
And preferably one that is a personal coach, a professional coach, and an agile coach who can sympathize and empathize with you.
One of the most hostile individuals I've ever met in my life gave me some of the best advice. We are all willful workers. We have the luxury of walking away. We may not be happy with the situations we are presented, but we are all participating in the workforce. We are presented with a great deal of luxury that many of our peers on this planet are not. So that's why I say I'm still winning, no matter how bad my day is.
As long as I can. Yeah. Well, I want to say we are past 7 o'clock, and I want to thank all of our. I'm sorry we don't get to your question. We'll still continue networking in a moment, and so you can still try and pose it if our lovely panelists will stick around. I want to thank all of them, Andrew, Amelia, Pat. Thank you for your wisdom. Thank you for contributing to the dialogue. And for everyone else, I hope you had. We delivered on it as we had hoped, that it was a provocative session, and that you took away some new thinking tonight that you may not have considered before. And if so, then mission accomplished. So thank you.